Hey guys, Jeff here, and welcome to a brand new series. Today I'm going to show you how to build a ground level deck. We're going to be building a shed on this as well, integrated right into this project. Now, ground level decks are notorious for rotting out, but if you build it right, it'll last a lot longer than you will. We're building basically a 12 by 12 platform. When you're constructing a deck in your head, you need to understand a few different things. One, the material doesn't always come 12 feet long. Two, sometimes the ends come split. Three, you got to consider your space. So here we're going from a patio to a garden bed that starts to raise up. I've already checked out with level and thrown some boards in a perimeter. Basically the ground is somewhat flat with a bit of a lean to the back, which is perfect because what we want to do is right up here. We're going with a 2x8 frame that's going to look just right there. Bam. Now this deck is going to be floating on blocks. We're not going to put it into concrete piers. We live in a 4-season northern climate. So when the frost comes, everything out here will all lift at the same time and then settle down at the same time again in the spring. So this is why we're going to build it this way. It gives us flexibility and it saves us a lot of hassle because whenever you put something in the ground on piers, you've got to get permit. But in our area, if we just do a floating deck, there's no permit required as long as we're less than 2 feet off the ground. So this means we can just draw it out on a piece of paper, go get our material, have it delivered, and bam, you're building, and in a couple of days you're finished. So the foundation of our deck is this. We're going to take 4x4 posts, cut it into sections, stick it through the middle, and then mount our 2x8s to the side of that 4x4. So our goal to start off with is to identify where these blocks are going to go, dig a hole so that the top of the block is flush with the ground, and dig it a little bit deeper so that we can add some stone screenings in that hole to level it all off, okay? This is very important. Now, knowing the end from the beginning is the key to success. If you're going with wood, you want your joists every 16-inch on center. If you're going with like a composite board, like a Trex, you want every 12-inch on center. Don't cheat on that. So if our joists are going to be here, I want to put this block probably somewhere back here in this area, all right, so that I'm not interfering with the joist activity, okay? Okay, so my boards are a little longer than I need. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the back here as my foundation. So I'm going to basically plan on having this hole right here so that my 4x4 clears and I'm not contacting joists. We'll block it in later, keep it simple. Then we're going to square it off and start working from the back and build forward. And the last joist, we're just going to leave off until we're really almost ready to go. And then we'll trim back everything all at the same time and then install our last joist. Once we have it all square, then it's time to worry about our distance. But right now we're just going to worry about our getting started, digging all of our holes. There's nothing sexy about digging a hole. Pull your block back roughly about the same position. There we go. And get it up. No, not in the middle, not in the middle, on the side. That'll represent what it looks like when it's finished. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to temporarily screw all the corners together, set it on 4 blocks, make sure the blocks are actually in the right position, and then we can square off the frame. Okay, now this is all temporary, just for the purpose of layout. We have to set on the blocks, get it all square, make sure it looks good across the front of the patio, which is the most visible place. And once we have that, we'll take our square shovel and we'll cut the grass around all the blocks once they're in perfect position. This way we don't have to dig a 2-foot wide hole. We can just dig a hole relatively for the space because all the dirt that we pull out has nowhere to go. So we're going to throw it back in the middle. The last thing you want to do is create these huge mounds of dirt that you got to trip over for the rest of the job. So right away you can see that there's a problem with the block, right? There we go. To me. I'm going off the centering of the joist so that I can square off better. Now we're going to do Matt. I'm going to have you over here and then you'll be over there. We're going to measure the same distance. I want you to put the top side of the numbers right on the corner. So you stand there and do that. And we'll get the measurement and see if we're somewhat square. So I can measure to the inside or the outside. The outside is obviously easier. 195 1/4. See the number, the top of that tape? That edge of the tape is the part I want in the corner. It's actually that relevant, so we're way off, which means that two have to go way back that way. Okay. Lift it, push it all the way back. All right. Because the lumber can have a warp, you have to go corner to corner, and that erases the whatever you're doing with the warp. You can't just put a square on it. Right? This time I'm exactly 16 feet. I'm starting to like that. I'm 194. So I'm 2 inches out. 193. There we go.
Lucky gift.
Now, here's the crazy part. 10 inches to the patio there. 7 inches to the patio here. So, I know this sounds nuts, but I've got to also be parallel to the patio. So now we've got it square, we've got to pick it up and set it again. So, all three of these locations have to move. Okay, 193, same number, we're good. So it can't be square 3 out of 4 and not the 4th. When you're setting your posts, basic construction technology allows us to have a 24-inch overhang from structure. So if this is your load, you can overhang 2 feet, okay? So resist the temptation to put this block right in the front corner, because the location of the block and then where the post, and where the location of the post and where the block ends, there's about a 5-inch difference there. And so it's always gonna be visible. You can't get a good finish. So if you set it back a little bit, which is what we're gonna do, we're gonna attach all of our joists with joist hangers. Then now this becomes a ridge beam on each end. We're gonna end up doubling it up with adhesive and nails, and that'll give it enough strength to carry the whole load of those 4 points and have the overhang, and it'll be solid like a rock, okay? This gives you a nice finish off the front, and I'm gonna take the joists off and get them out of the way. If you dig these holes, this frame will be in this location, drop right to the grass. I need you to just go around and do this, because this can be moved in the hole to where the square is. All right, so the idea here basically is to take your screenings. I'm using limestone screenings. You could use stone dust as well. Just try not to use anything too big in the way of gravel. And I'm just gonna flatten out the bottom here a little bit, okay? And then we're gonna set our block in. Okay, so we're back to step one. Let's just build our box again, tack it together, get it on the block, square it, move some dirt, make sure we're happy with the actual locations. If we have to move a block or do a little packing to level off at this point, now you wanna do it. And then, as you can see, I've got some additional blocks in here as well. This is for the next video. We're gonna be building a post frame shed here inside on this deck. Not every time you have to pour concrete or just be in dirt. In this situation, we're gonna build the shed on the deck, but we're integrating it so that the posts are carrying all the load of the roof. That way the deck is more than strong enough to support the walls and all the other functions going on with it. Now, when you're building a ground level deck or any structure, you've got to keep in mind that we're transferring load from points to a ridge, and that ridge has to be strong like in your house. In home construction, we see 2x8 or 2x10. 2x8 in residential construction is actually about the weakest you're ever gonna get. And it was really a budget cut thing back in the 70s. A lot of townhouses were built like that, and you can tell because the floors have a bit of bounce. Now, if the deck has a little bit of bounce, it's not an issue. So 2x8 is the smallest you wanna go, and no more than a 12-foot length, okay? Now, there is no permit requirements. There's no code requirements for this. But that doesn't mean we get to be lazy. It doesn't mean we try to be cheap and go with 2x6. If you want a deck to last, you got to build it to last. So we're going to use 2x8. We're going to double the rim so it can carry the load and transfer the points. We're going to pretend we're building this 10 feet off the ground and build it with the same integrity. So that way we know it's going to last. So we have our basic in place. Now, when you're working with a floating foundation, that means you need to usually do everything twice, all right? And that's fine. So right now Matt is identifying the highest point on our perimeter. Is it over here?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a solution to how high this is, and that is just to move some of that soil. Because I really love that being something like that, okay? Our goal here is to try to eliminate too much work and work with the property. Okay, so we got to move soil then, because I'm not going to lift 1.5 inches over here. That's too much. Remember, the average step in the house is 8 inches. So right now this piece of wood is 7 1/4. And with the piece of wood here, it makes it 8 1/4, which is pretty close to normal. So even if I put a door on my shed right here, right? All I need is 1 patio stone on the ground, and all of a sudden it's a normal step into the house. Because I can use a 2-inch stone on limestone screening outside. Always thinking end from the beginning when you're building, okay? I want to move my whole structure forward so that this post is right on the back corner. Okay, so let's do that first. And that obviously Means we're gonna need to do some shovel work here, right? So let's just get the shovels out. Let's move the dirt and then we'll square this off. Well, you know, whenever it's nice enough to work in Canada, it's always super hot. So now I got this as my post. I want to basically square the whole deck off of this if I can, which is why we set up all those other holes to begin with. So before we go any further, let's go measure across to cross and see how square we are. 17 feet, 3/4. 17 feet and 1/4. 3/4 and 1/4. So I've got to move my block here. I'm gonna put my shovel in against my hole. I'm just gonna use a lever. I'm gonna wedge that over a little bit. Same thing over here. All right. Now, as a DIY project, if you're not perfectly square, you can get away with a little bit of a cheat here, because your first board, you're gonna wanna have an overhang of about 1 inch, right? And if you're doing a 12-foot deck and your plan is to put this last board on over top as a cap, then you get to put all your boards here, put all your splits here, cut 4 or 5 inches off, and then add the last rim joist after the fact. That's right, we'll get to that later. I am considering all of your unique needs here by showing you a system that you can modify the finish so it's perfect every time, right? We're square. Our blocks on our corners are all making contact, except for this one. This one has to move over. Perfect. Wow, this is actually gonna work. Okay, so now from the front, we're gonna just throw in a screw into each of these blocks, carry the load, and level this all off with our 6-foot level. That'll be awesome. Remember, when you're using a level this long, anytime that bubble's in between the two lines, you're relatively level. You're level to the point where no one's gonna walk and fall over because it's got such a bad slope. The other thing about a floating deck that's kind of cool is even after it's all completed, you've always got the ability to come over here from the outside, put in a bar as a lever, lift your deck, which will take this with it, and you can slide a shim underneath through this gap, okay? So you've always got the ability to level it off over time if it needs a little wiggle here and then. So I'm perfectly level here. That's a miracle. I haven't even attached anything yet. This is awesome. So here comes tip number 1 to making your deck last. You don't want to leave exposed, untreated wood in your deck frame. So go grab one of these buckets called cut and seal, all right? And it's not perfect, but it's also not sitting in water, the cut. Dunk it, all right? Seal it, done. It's that easy. It's easier to dunk than paint. Use your foot as a lever. Perfect. All right, that's the foundation. Now we got to make minor adjustments and add a little bit more strength to the whole system. Let's just recap, because there's a lot going on there. Your 4 corners have to make contact with your ridges. In our design, my corner is actually structured from my shed, so that complicates the scenario. You need to have it level, all 4 sides. You got to have it square, so you measure corner to corner. And you have to dig and redig and position and tamp and add everything you got to do to get everything structural out as far as elements are concerned in a perfect location. Make sure when you cut, you seal. And then when you're done, perfect. Take out a measuring tape from the outside and make a mark everywhere there's a red square on your tape measure. And you don't have a tape measure with red squares, buy one. Check out our link in the video description. You're going to want to have one of these for sure. This marks every location of a joist, and X is where the meat of the wood goes. Okay, so the red square line here, that means the edge of it, and you put an X, and here we go. How did I know that was going to happen? So this is actually in the wrong location for me. So what I'm going to do in this scenario is I am going to go to 122. Hey Matt, can you mark a line there to 122? We're going to translate it on both sides. Okay. And scratch out the next one to the right of that. Thank you. This is where my last joist is going to be. All right. If you're going to do irregular joist spacing to satisfy your blocks, which may be necessary, just go less than 16. And the reason you can get away with that is because we're going to use the camo hidden fastener system. No one's going to see the screw surfaces and realize your joists are lined up incorrectly. That's another one of the key components to making sure your deck lasts a lifetime. All right, we're just moving dirt, hanging joist hangers. Basically, we'll show you how to install these in a second, but I'm just laying it all out, staying organized, trying to keep the job site clean. We're going to just backfill some of these holes a little bit, fill the rest of the hole up with our stone screenings. We're just making sure that everything's going to fit. And then before we can actually put these joists in place, we got to cover everything with landscape cloth. So whenever you got a ground level deck, you got to be careful that the weeds don't grow through the deck. Nothing worse than having a hairy deck. Yeah. Well, someone might actually find that funny. You never know. We're just eyeballing this, right? Anything that's no good to us, let's get rid of it. It's all garbage. Now this crap only comes 3 feet wide, but it's a 100-foot roll. Hold on to your end and just toss it at me. All right? Okay. So what you want to do is aiming to line it up like that and about a foot past where you want it. Okay? The idea here is this is just a weed barrier and grass inhibitor, right? Here's how we hang a joist hanger. We have a piece of cut joist, and you'll notice that in this case, and every manufacturer is different, so you got to really line it up, okay? You get the joist in the hanger so that the front edge of this hanger is on the same black line for your every 16. Now, this side of the joist has got a big notch out of it from the edge of the tree. So you don't really know where the top is unless you use a block to set it, okay? Once you got it set, you're going to take structural screws. They come in these boxes. It comes with the bit. You're going to set your first screw. That's it. All right. Now we're going to hang every one of these just like that. Then we can put the joists in and then tighten everything up, okay? And we still have the ability to rotate a little bit if it's got a little bit of a warp to it. All right? And that's how you can set all your joist hangers. And you just drop all your sticks in place. This is so much easier to do when you got 3 hands. When you see this all come together, it'll all make sense. But for now, I'm going to throw in a couple of timber lock screws. When you're using joist hangers, take a look at this. These holes on the side are designed for a screw to go in within the first 3/8 to 1/2 inch of the wood. Now, over the course of 50 years, that's one of the weakest places in the whole structure because you're opening up gaps in the wood on both sides. Moisture gets in there, starts to cause problems. And then when those get soft, the propensity is for the frame to be able to start bowing out on you. Now, I'm not talking about a 5-year problem, but we're talking about a 50-year maintenance-free deck here, right? We run a timber lock all the way in 4 inches into that joist, and I'm going to tighten up the entire structure all at the same time. And that will give its lateral strength. Bam. Now that is how you build a deck. Code allows you to get away with some of these joist hangers, the screws go in an angle, and it just barely catches the wood. Not sufficient. When you got technology like this for 50 cents a screw, throw the extra $3 in your deck and get the extra 20 years out of it. Now, generally the rule of thumb when you have a joist hanger is every hole has to have a structural nail or screw in it. Now, if you understand what this means, this joist hanger is rated for 2x8 or 2x10, which means it's rated to carry a 2x10 over 16 feet, which is a bigger span. And our ground level deck, it really has nowhere to fall because we're kind of on the ground already. So you're going to have to forgive me, but since there's no building code, I don't see the benefit of wasting those structural screws. 3 is fine. I'm not even going to go do the time to go in the side. I'm using timber lock to hold it together because all these extra screws on the side aren't going to provide me any benefit. All it's going to do is cost me about another $30 for the deck. just to give us a little flexibility with splitting finishing boards, we're going to cut everything 3 inches shy. And we're going to use this as joist hanger. This is designed to be on the outside edge. So you actually fill all your screws in, and then you have to cut your joist shy, about a 1/4 inch for each side because of the screw holes. All right? And then after we're done, we're going to take a reciprocator, we'll trim the ends, and then we're going to cap the ends with cedar so that when you look at the deck visually, all you see is one big cedar plank, and you're not going to see exposed end boards, okay? So we're just trying to dress this up. The double rim we're going to do soon, so we're going to laminate, and then we're going to put in our bolts, and then we're going to use a 16-foot piece of cedar to span over the double rims and make sure that visually all you see is one board. And from the beginning, always have a plan, not just to make it strong, but to make it look pretty. Okay. You're going to take exactly 1/2 inch off of that joist, because all of these screw heads create a problem. See gum. Boom.
None?
Well, that was just too easy.
Drum roll.
Oh, great. One of the neighbors is out for a good smoke. That's nice. Look at that. Perfect every time. You knew it was coming. You knew it was coming. Right. I don't want to hear it. We're going to throw the cloth in the last little bit here. This is so much easier if this is just gone. Just cut the extra. Drop it and walk, man. Just never cuts fast, and it just adds so much danger to the day. It's not necessary to hack away. Every time I see someone do that, I'm just like, there's another trip to the hospital. I'd hate to see you have a trip to the hospital with the back of your hands split wide open.
I don't take trips to the hospital.
That's where all your nerves are, by the way.
I let it score.
In case you're wondering. God put all your nerves in the back of your hands so you can protect yourself from defenders with the front. Okay. All right. Point loads on a deck are notorious for being never sufficient without some extra blocking. Whew. We're going to throw in a few screws today, hold everything in place. Might I suggest that if you're in business and you're doing this for a client, your last step of the day should be to make sure everything is blocked and square and level, and then drive your extra screws in it, because they're going to come out at the end of the day, and they're going to have a peek, and they're going to judge your work based on how level it is, even if you haven't done that part of the job yet. And their satisfaction is going to be dependent on that situation. All right, so now tomorrow we are going to come back. We are going to properly finish off blocking. We're going to go through that process. We're going to cap our rim joists, go through that process. We're going to throw through our structural bolts into our vertical members. And then we're going to add our decking and go through all of the challenges we're facing with that, with our invisible screw system. By the end of tomorrow, we should have ourselves a functioning deck and 4 sticks in the ground. How nice. Cheers. All right, guys, next morning here, it's bright and early and sunny and hot. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna just pick up where we left off by cutting the ends of these off, laminating our beams, finishing off anything structural and bracing, and then we can get right into decking. Let's just get this done here. Always making sure that you got plenty of pressure pushing into it. That way it's the blade that's bouncing around and not the tool. And the last of the 2 timber lock screws. Get rid of this wobble. Before I go any further, I want to get one in the other end so I'm not warping the end of my design. Just making sure to drive it nice and flush, because we still have to double up the rim joist. So here's my portable table saw. I've got to turn this 2x8 into a 2x6. I can't use a 2x8 for blocking on a ground level deck because there's too many obstructions. So I'm just going to rip this down a little bit, and we'll get that done in a second. So the end of the saw here is 1.5 inches. That's close enough. I'll use that as my guide. There we go. So even though the blade is old and the wood is wet, you can see the difference in power when you're using a corded tool. Ah, I love my corded tools. Okay, so before we can laminate our double beams, we've got to finish all of the structure inside. So that means getting all of these posts level and secure and bolted in place. And this one is way out. It's probably really obvious on camera, actually, isn't it? Let's see. That's about level. What we did last night was just toss a couple screws in so it wouldn't blow around. We'll toss in a couple more and try to get at least level in one direction. There we are. That's pretty decent. Realizing that because we're doing with an 8-foot structure, there's gonna be a lot of movement in this regardless. So what I wanna do here is I just wanna get it close enough in this direction so that when I put my header on, it'll tie the posts together the same distance as the base, and it'll kind of self-square. Now I'm putting on 4 screws, 1, 2, 3, and 4, top and bottom. That'll give it some rigidity. The 1/2-inch bolt will go through the middle, and my other block is gonna go here. That'll give us enough strength that no matter what kind of windstorm we're facing, it's not going anywhere. Brilliant. Okay, so we're gonna cut our blocking now, 14 3/4. We'll get that in, screwed in place, screw it to this, and then we'll put in a bolt. And if there's anyone out there who hasn't seen this yet on the channel, this line here is the 0-degree line. This is where my saw blade cuts, okay? Even has an adjustment on the foot, so it's easy to know where to go. And in order to cut square, all we do, release the lock, lift the table up a little bit for clearance, hold this tight to the wood, and drive across the top of your square. So make your mark, line up your cut. Perfect every time when your table's set deep enough. All right. There we are. That is how you make all your small cuts out here without having to bring a table saw and a chop saw. You can do all the building with one tool. This actually becomes structural as well. So if you have a piece of decking board that's hanging 3 inches over here, right, and it's cut around and you're stepping here and there's no support, you're gonna break right through. So this allows us a little bit more security for that situation. We're just using pressure treated screws. Oh. And we don't need many, just a couple. Remember, this block isn't carrying any load, it's just stability. Nice and tall on the top. Making sure that when you screw these in, you're using a triangle formation. That's where the strength is. Leave lots of room to run the bolt in the middle. So we are going to be going with a 1/2-inch by 8-inch carriage bolt. It's a structural galvanized metal bolt, and here's the code. Codes are on everything that's structural, so an engineer could easily come by and confirm that you use the right hardware. So there's no cheating. All right, we want to make sure that we get all the way through the other side with lots of room for the washer and the nut. And we also want to be able to compress this to the point where this head is sunken right into the wood, nice and flush, so that we can laminate this beam. Okay, here we go. We're using 1/2-inch drill bit. It's is cold steel, cold forged, sorry. And this will shatter or shear off if it overheats. So you're best to be on a drill function like this, okay? Minimum speed, something like number 2 is usually fine. You line this up and you want to push nice and straight. And as this gets clogged up with wood, you want to pull it out to release it, because it only overheats if it gets full of wood and it's still trying to spin inside that circle. It'll overheat that way. This works great. You hear that start to work? Back it out. Clean off the bit. Back it out. Clean it off. You can do this a few times until you get through the other side. Pretty sure that was the other side. Now this is an exact fit. You can't get this in just by pushing. This is carrying structural load, and they're designed to be exactly the same height, right to the thread of that. It requires a hammer to put in. That's good, but it's not flush yet. Now we're flush. Just remember, if you have to take this out, you're gonna hit the hammer on this end and knock it out for whatever reason. This bolt is then garbage because you've changed the thread. Okay, so resist the temptation to use these bolts until you are absolutely confident you're ready to be finished. All right, we're gonna tighten these on by hand, and then we're gonna use a wrench to sink this washer into the wood as well. And that's how we're gonna know we've got a good compression. You're gonna hear the wood complaining here. It'll go squeak and crack and creak. That's not a problem. You want it in there, buried. All right. So that under pressure and under force, there's no more wiggle room. If this is moving around and this is loose, it'll slowly unthread, and then what good is it? Okay, so now I'm gonna block up the rest of these things. And then it's time to laminate the joist. All right, okay, well, here we go. So, I know in the beginning of the video, I said that you could basically build this with a couple of drills and a skill saw. If you do have toys, you should use them because this makes it a lot easier. Generally speaking, we're gonna glue and screw our cedar over top of this, which is why the timber locks and our carriage bolts had to be flush mounted. Doubling up a joist, there's two ways to do it. You can add you can add nails, okay, every 2 inches, spacing every joist, okay? Or you can glue and screw. Generally speaking, because we're on a ground level deck, again, there's no code, but we're gonna improvise the best system in case you're building a deck using this and higher off the ground, which by the way is easier. Ground level decks are a real pain in the butt. You gotta put the dirt somewhere. You gotta manage the slope, and it's hard to get level when you're on the ground. If you're gonna build at least 1 foot off the ground, it makes life so much easier. But for here, we're on the ground. Might as well show you how to do the hard way. And just a quick recap, because we've done a lot of structure here. Carriage bolt to point load. This is carrying load. That's carrying load. Every location. We've got timber lock to keep things from opening up. We've got joist hangers to keep things stabilized and to keep them from rocking. Okay, that's why they're pinched side to side. And now we're going the extra length of doubling up the strength of this rim so that it's strong enough to carry the load of someone standing in the middle and passing it along to these point loads, okay? That's really all this is. It's a little bit overkill, but for 30 bucks, you can do a lot of overkill. Now, we want to take a look at crown on this. So this is my top. This has a propensity to go like this, okay? So under deflection, it straightens out. That's really what I'm looking for here. I don't think I mentioned to crown all the rest of the joist, but you really should as you're working. And because I'm using a nail gun on a deck, I don't need to use the glue. But like I said, if you're gonna go with screws, then you should. What I'm gonna suggest if you're working alone is grab a clamp. Let this be your extra pair of hands. You really wanna start your nailing Oh, the compressor's turned down. I have it set for when I was spray painting. That explains it. Okay, this should be working better now. There we go. 2x8 means 4 nails every 2 inches, okay? And then we're gonna go down here, start at the other end, lift this flush because I've got a crown on it. And if any point is too high, I can just step on it. That's the easiest way to do this. There we go. That's that simple. So just to recap, keep it level, keep it square, keep the sticks plumb, make sure you're using structural components when you're building structure, double up anything that's got to carry load to a point load. You can build your own deck. You can do it, and you can do it yourself, all right? There's no reason why the average homeowner can't pull something like this off in their backyard. bottom line is, it's going to be two-man effort out here for at least 5 days, maybe 6 for us to do the whole build. If you want to hire a contractor nowadays to do that, you're looking somewhere around, with material costs, closer to $20,000. That's the world we live in. And if you find a better deal than that, you probably don't want them working in your home. So what I'm doing here is I'm just taking 6 boards, sticking them together. I do this all the time at the Home Depot on a cart. I'll line up a bunch of 2x4s, put them together. The one that's all warped jumps right out at you. You don't have to pick them up one at a time and eyeball them. Just do this. Put the one back away and you can have this. Now, this one's got a warp. The rest of them are really straight. That's awesome. Like, I don't have to pick through this. Note, I didn't buy this at Home Depot. They don't carry this kind of quality cedar. If you're in Ottawa, go to Perkins Lumber. They don't pay me to say this, but their cedar is the best stuff, I think, in Ontario. Cheers. When I'm marking out my deck, I'm actually going to start a 1/2 inch past the back, just fingertip really. I'm going to try to maintain that gap all the way along. Our total deck distance is not a whole 12 feet. It is a little bit shy. Looks like about a 3/4 inch overhang here. That's perfect. When you're doing a 12 by 12, take my advice here. Cut the rim joist about 3 inches shy on purpose. This allows you to double up the edge if you want to. It gives you overhang on both sides, gives you the flexibility in case things are a little bowed. Like homeowners, you know, you're not going to get everything perfect the first time you build a deck. So give yourself that mercy, and then when you're done, you can trim the boards down with a chalk line, all right? So we'll start with a little overhang on each end. And if there's a bit of bow somewhere, we can straighten it out as we go, but it gives you that mercy, all right? Now we're just going to trace out around our posts. Use a jigsaw to set that to the depth we want. Right now, if I stick a pencil underneath here, I am a good 2 inches. That's too much overhang, okay? That means I've got 3.5 inches of meat and 2 inch overhang. It's too much because my screws are going to be here and here, and there's too much chance that you could step on this and lift the board out, okay? So we want to get a little closer. We only want a 1 inch overhang maximum. Here's some great advice for people who are installing deck boards, okay? If it's just a deck and this is a post for a railing, then this is going to be finished surface. You're probably going to use a cedar post too. What I'm building here is actually, it's a post frame shed. So all of my surfaces are getting covered. So I'm going to leave a nice bit of gap. Because I'm close to the ground, I want a 1/4 inch all around just to allow for any swelling. If you're not close to the ground, you can go a little bit tighter, okay? Give yourself like a 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch gap. All right, use a square. You measure underneath. Right now my gap is 2.5. I only want 1.5. So I'm going to come 1.5 inches. Half, 1.5. There's my line. Okay, same thing over here. That's my garret. Here we go. Half, 1.5. Boom. And that's what I'm going to cut. Okay, perfect every time. Just a quick tip when you're buying your blades. Zoom in here, Max. Check this out. Okay. That says fine wood finish. There's extra fine wood finish as well. If you're really worried about it, I just found that the fine wood finish blade is more than enough when you're working on your cedar. You're always going to get a couple of hairs, and then you got to sand them out. But it's a good start. Oh, hang on a second. That's fresh from the factory and it's already got a tilt. That's great. Okay, whatever. I was due for a new jigsaw, eh? No need to drill. You can actually buy them even thinner and they're called scribing blades, but I find they break too easy. And then come back to get the excess. That's one. Now, because I promised everybody you can do this deck with a skill saw, here's the other option you have. you can do this cut and this cut with a skill saw, okay? From the top and the bottom side. And then you can take your utility knife and just cut that, put it over an empty space and hit it with your hammer. It'll break right out nice and clean, okay? And then you can use a utility knife to clean up the edge if you need to. But if you have a jigsaw, like I said, perfect every time. I'm going to be using the ACQ deck screw. All right, this is a 3-inch, and it's brown. It's going to be about the same color as the cedar after I'm done staining. Everything between these posts is actually framed into the shed, so it's door or wall, so it won't matter. So I'm going to go surface screw. I like to do as many surface screws as I can when I'm starting a deck, just to help keep things straight. 1 inch from the edge, flush to the surface. And I also like to surface screw the outside edge, okay, because I want to have this screw. I can't trust the camel screw from this angle to go off the side and in, so we're going to have to do some surface screws. And I want to go right into that rim joist. Okay, again, just to the surface. Try not to break the surface too much. Here we go. We're going to do this all the way along. And then the exposed part of the deck over here, we're going to do the camo screws. So here is the camo system. You've probably seen this before. Been using this for, wow, 15 years. That's amazing. It's amazing how something can be on the market that long and it's still finding new customers going, wow, I've never seen that before. The screws are snipped at the end, all right, so they don't split the wood. And they're reverse threaded. So this goes into the board. This is reverse threaded to help pull the board tight at the end. This feeds it on an angle. It's not 45 degrees, it's more like around 65. And it goes just below the surface of this edge. And it drives through the board into the joist on that angle. And then when the bit makes contact with it, you're completely in. All right, you just release. And now here's the surface. That's around the side of the surface. So when you have all of your boards together on this board, they become invisible. After the first couple of rains, that wood will actually swell and close over the hole, and you'll never see a fastener again. This is one of the reasons I can make this a claim that it's going to be a 50-year deck, because when you don't have surface screws, you don't have anything promoting holding of water or access of water past your finish. Every screw damages the wood and creates an access for water, and it starts an early decay around the screw head. Because we're going off the side, the surface of our deck doesn't decay, it doesn't have splinters, you don't get advanced rot, and it lasts a hell of a lot longer. You know, most guys in the decking world, if they're lining up, they'll throw a chalk line, and then they'll bend the board to meet the chalk line. They only use it at the very beginning, which means it's useless. If you're not going to use a laser line or a chalk line every row, your best bet, take the 6 boards, get the straightest board and start with it, and then just go. Over the course of a whole deck, no one's going to tell any difference. And if you're one of those guys that uses the chalk line, put away the toy and just learn how to pick a good piece of wood to start. All right, cedar is notorious for splitting. The weakest spot is right here off this cut. Okay, I'm going to show you how to install screw right here. And for everybody who doesn't believe this is going to work, once you've seen this, you owe me $100. Go in reverse and then drive it. Pay me now. Okay, now for the rest of your deck, you want to do spacing. Now, if your wood is dry like this is and you're elevated off the ground and you're going to have a good breeze, then go with, might I say, 1/8 of an inch. It means it's going to shrink a little bit, or you can even go tight if it's wet. When you're near the ground, you want to leave a good space because it's going to swell a little bit, all right, generally speaking. So I'm using my framing square. This is my triangle, and it is 3/16, so almost a full quarter. And that's my space. Nice and simple, all right? And if I use this all the way consistently everywhere I'm going, I'll be in great shape to maintain my spacing. Again, because this is going to be inside the shed, I'm just using these screws This will help me to identify where my joist is if I need to have contact with it at a later date. Attaching these walls and the wall plate directly to the floor, because we're going to be using the post rail system. So I have my posts. All I need now is rails to put my walls on. So I am going to put one rail right near the bottom without ground contact so that everything stays nice and dry. You never know what the future is going to hold. What kind of features and benefits you might want to put in your shed later. So knowing where the joists are could be of benefit. Okay. You can see at this end, the board has a bit of a propensity to want to make some movement. Not a big deal. We can shorten that up. We're going to throw our camo on here. We're going to load our screw. I'm simply going to pull it forward and then drive the screw in. Hold it in place. All right, done. Now I'm going to come over here and compress it nice and tight and then drive it again. Now, once you're done putting screws on both sides at every joist, your board's finished. Then and only then do you move to the next board. Remember, when you're working by yourself, be happy with everything you install, one piece at a time. Don't go running ahead thinking I'll just throw a few screws in and catch up the rest later. You'll miss them, they'll cup, they'll warp. Make sure that you're happy with everything you've touched as you go. That is the rule, not just for DIYers, it's also a good rule for pros. Remember, if you've got a decking project and you're interested in getting these screws in this tool, check out our Amazon link in the video description below. We've got there as well. All right. Okay. Now the first two boards are done, everything's straight. We're gonna just follow this line for the rest of the deck. Piece of cake. All right, now don't go anywhere because now you know how to build a deck, we still want to show you how to finish it. Remember, there's been a lot of changes in technology and materials we've used in the last 50 years, and most consumers are really behind the time because people that are advertising deck finishing are mostly box stores and they carry the worst product in the market. So in the end of this video, I'm going to show you the best thing that's on the market and how you can get your hands on it. Well guys, this is Jenna of Jenna and Matt's Through House. Thanks for coming out. She's going to join me for a bit, help me put down the surface of the deck, and I'm going to teach her the ins and outs of doing this because we're just doing the first part of the project. This is going to be a three-phase project. Three-phase, right?
Yep,
You're going to
all the way around.
Steam room and then a hot tub over here?
Hopefully.
Somewhere around the other side. But you're going to put the deck in regardless?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, got it. All right, so first I got to show you how to place your deck boards because both sides could be faced up. Okay. But you see how they come with a rainbow?
Yep.
Or a smile?
Okay. Yeah.
You want to install it like a rainbow.
Okay.
Okay? Because when it's like this, it wants to cup.
Okay.
And if it goes like this, then it holds water in the middle and then in the rod early. We're building this the last 50 years, so if we install it like this and does any cupping at all, the water's still running off. All right? And then the only thing we want to look for is if there's splits. Put the splits to the other end. You got it. All right? Piece of cake. So we're just going to grab a few boards, get them in position.
Okay.
And then that's a split. They're up. What we're doing, Jenna, is I'm trying to go about a ½ inch past the deck, and then we'll use this as our spacer. Okay. Bam, that's it. It's that easy. We squeeze this and it opens up.
Okay.
Set it there. Oh.
And it does what? It just stays there?
Well, it usually stays there, but this edge is kind of worn a little bit, so I'll have to hold it in place. And then we load it up with screws. And then you can screw your side, and I'll screw mine.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that good?
Keep going.
Keep going.
Until this part here hits the metal.
That's what she said.
You're gonna have to turn your handle and go. There you go.
Woo.
You got it. All right.
Okay.
And you see how the screw goes off the side?
Yep.
So there's nothing on the surface.
Perfect.
So it won't splinter. Right? So this will be barefoot friendly.
Perfect.
All right. And then we're just gonna go down one joist at a time to the end of the board.
Okay.
And then when we're done, we'll start all over again.
Seems pretty easy. Hard for me to mess up. Good or more?
You gotta push. There you go.
There we go.
If you push, then the screw head will get in the hole and engage.
Okay.
If you're not pushing hard enough, then it's just gonna spin around.
Perfect.
All right?
Do you want me to just keep doing this?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
We just gotta work our way across the whole deck. All right, let me see what's going on here.
Maybe you just have a better touch than I do.
All right, I'm gonna teach you one trick. This is interesting because I've never considered this before, but you see the shape of that is like a star?
Yep.
Okay, so put the bit on it before pull the trigger. Make sure that it's in that. Just give it a little bit of a okay? Now push and then pull the trigger.
Push and then
push
pull.
push on the screw and then pull the trigger. There you go.
There we go.
If you pull the trigger and then push, you're just spinning on the head.
Okay, perfect.
All right? You see how the board is kind of curving?
Yep.
It's easier to fix that curve now than later.
Okay.
The longer the distance, the easier it is to fix. So pinch this board nice and shut. Throw your screw in. Look at that. Awesome.
Better.
Okay. Now you can see, this isn't all that difficult, is it?
No.
Day like today, I want one of those umbrella hats. There you go. Don't be afraid to push. Because once you get this down, you can do another 2,000 square feet of this all by yourself without any problem. Ready? Push and then pull. Boom. You're hired. You're waiting on me. That's awesome.